Hello and welcome back to episode 5 of the Texas Private School Podcast. I am one-third of your hosting crew, Wes Tolleson. Yet again, I'm joined by my friends Walker and Ryan. Guys, how are y'all doing?
Doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing
Doing
all
great.
right. How are you doing, Walker?
I'm doing good, doing good. Almost the end of this year, getting ready for 2021.
Yeah, thank God 2020 is almost over, but we won't get into that as we're not a current events podcast. But we from the Texas Private School Podcast genuinely hope that all of you had a safe holiday season and hope 2020 is rounding out well for y'all. In terms of this episode, we're actually going to take some topics that y'all wanted to address and speak on them because we put it out on Twitter a couple weeks ago, some stuff, because we knew we were going to have some time to fill in between basketball starting and state ending. And we got some of y'all's questions and topics that y'all wanted us to cover. And the first one we're actually going to look at is something that's very interesting and all of us can comment on are the all district and all state lists. And this is a controversial topic every year it comes out regarding TAPS. And I'm not going to go too far into this because there's so many rabbit holes I can go down. However, if someone was to say that TAPS and TAPS coaches always got the all district and all state list right, they would be a straight up liar. There are so many controversies regarding this every year. However, there are some things that we can dive into and dissect a little more clearly now that they're out. One of the first questions is, or the first things we can comment on is it harder to be, or how much harder is it to be all district, all state in the North region? And that's not to play down the South at all. And it's a controversial topic, but there are some people on Twitter and people within the TAPS community that said that there are guys in the North that would be all state if they played in the South, but didn't get anything regarding all district because of the division they played in. And that's Division One and Division Two. However, Walker, I'll pass it to you first. Do you think there's any validity regarding this claim?
I mean, I honestly do think so. I think if you go down the collegiate talent that's coming out of there is ridiculous. And looking through like just the backs by themselves, there's multiple running backs that are made second team like all district just because there's so much talent in the North. And if you go and put them down into the South, like those guys would be first team all district any day of the week. But with the Division 1 talent that's there, like in the North, it's ridiculous. And so it just makes it for the guys not getting the exact awards that they deserve. And it's rough, but I think I'm not discrediting the South. I think the South has amazing talent through and through, but you have to understand that it's just right now the talent is so much above in the North.
I agree. And I said before, I think there's a lot higher concentration of talent around the DFW and Metroplex area and the North as a whole. However, that's not discounting the South because there's a lot of talent in the Houston area as well. However, for the past couple of years, there's been a lot more of that finding itself in the North region. Ryan, do you agree with both of us, or do you have anything else to add?
I was just gonna say when it comes to like the North and the South, and I think you're gonna see this from a lot of guys in the North. They'll think just because of how the South plays every year and in all the divisions that have, whether it be Division 1 or Division 2 or Division 3 of that factor, you always think that the North players are so much higher because of the skill that you see all designated in the Dallas area. And the fact that in the South, there's only a couple teams in each division, not just Division 2, which is what you think of immediately when you think of only two teams, but in most of the South area, you only have a couple teams that spark out of there. So all these Dallas kids think that, they're so much better and so much greater because they think the teams are so much more talented. And that may be true, but at the same time, it's such a difference, and these teams don't play against each other unless they're in the playoffs or whatever. So it's really hard to get like a distinction whether these Dallas guys are truly better than all the Houston and Austin players. So it's a really hard distinction to make, but I think overall there are a lot of guys who are just basing that off of the fact they don't know how the other cities play. Correct? Like I think that's a good statement to make.
Right.
Yeah, I have to agree. And also, we saw this play out within our own podcast. I think there's a lot more wild cards in the South because since there's a lesser concentration of talent there, we don't know these top teams how good they really are because they just maul all of the teams below them. We saw that with Regents. None of us really knew how good Regents were until they came out and shocked DC, and we picked DC all the way through the playoffs. So that's just a prime example of that. And also, I think as time goes on, you're seeing a growing sense of regionalism and kind of the DFW area versus the Houston area, even in private and public school sports. So that's something to watch out for going forward and see if there's a growing divide between the areas of Texas. However, we'll move into Division One and focus in a little bit more. We're looking at some snubs here, and we see the biggest one by far is Parish offensive lineman Austin UK got second team all district, which is an absolute crime. It might have been a crime if he got second team all state, but the fact he didn't get first team all district is just absolutely baffling. No one from the Parish offensive line got first team all district, which if you watched any game this year and you saw how comfortable Preston Stone was in the pocket, it's just completely baffling. So Walker, I'll hand it to you first. Do you think there's any reason, or is there any reason you can come up with why no one from the Parish offensive line got this recognition?
I was shocked. I really was. Looking at like for the just in Division One, the District One for Division One, I mean, Tommy and James Brockemeyer makes sense. The offensive lineman for the Catholic makes sense. Even the Preston would make sense. But Joshua Cobb from Midland Christian, I mean, as a sophomore making first team all district above a senior Austin UK, I mean, it's shocking. I mean, I watched Joshua's film and it was very good. Don't get me wrong, he'll be a great lineman when he gets he still is getting there and he's still a lineman now. But I mean, I think. I don't know how you really go into these. Because especially for linemen, do you just go off of talent because he should be up there again? Like, do you go off of all right how good their team did? Then he should be on there too because they went all the way up to the state championship. Do you do that then? Like how do you really rate these offensive linemen? Because if you rate it by talent, he should be up there. If you rate him on how good his team did, he should be up there too. So it's very difficult to rate offensive linemen, especially because they don't really have stats to help besides maybe sacks given up. But I don't know. I was very shocked about that. I think it was shocking. I think not even him. I think any of those offensive linemen for Paris should have been at least higher up. So it was a complete shock to me of how they didn't get first team all district.
Yeah, I'll have to agree. Before I comment anymore, Ryan, what do you have to say on this whole situation?
I agree with both the things you just said, Walker, especially the sophomore thing. I think the sophomore aspect of it is quite literally something that you have to take into account of because I hate to be this guy and play the play the seniority ranking and all that. But when it comes to these honors, it's kind of something that you have to put in there a little bit because especially since it's taps too. And in all reality, Joshua Cobb has got 2 more years to play and he would have already been second team all district. Like that's still a very high honor to have second team all district. But the problem I see is when you got a senior who played a really great season this year and his team played a really great season, not giving him that spot along with the other great linemen that are on that list is kind of a shame because yes, Joshua Cobb can make first team all district and all state honors like the next 2 years, but now he has to cut off a senior who tried really hard this year. And I think not dishing on Joshua Cobb, but I think Austin UK is just a guy, especially with how his team played this year. You can't knock on that, right? You really can't.
And I think also you have to look into that. So how they do the ranking. So basically, I was looking into this. So basically, if you were higher up than him, so Joshua Cobb was first team all district. Austin UK for the all-state list can't pass him until he's on the list. So that's why Austin UK made honorable mention all-state. And then Joshua Cobb was the last rank for lineman on second team. So Austin could never pass him until he was put on, which I think is just shocking. Like, how are you supposed to put a guy who was the left tackle for Parish Episcopal, state champion Parish Episcopal, on honorable mention? A kid who's had such a good season that he's been blowing up getting Power 5 offers every single week. I just think that's ridiculous because I was just shocked. Like I think that's insane that kid can fall so low because I don't get it, man.
No, on the surface, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. However, everyone knows, and anyone that follows TAPS knows, there is a ton, and I mean a ton of politics that go into TAPS and all these all district and all state rankings. I'm not saying for a fact that's what happened here, but a lucky guess usually is if you're looking at this and something really just blatantly doesn't make sense, about 90% of the time, there's some level of politics involved. And again, these are coaches, these are human coaches voting on these awards, and they have flaws like the rest of us. So, no one is completely free from that kind of bias. Another big thing was Hamp Fay didn't get anything on the all district list, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Walker, didn't he commit somewhere recently?
So he's been committed at least before his senior year to Michigan State, and this is one of the biggest things for this all state for Division One, especially. You had Preston Stone, who deserved first team all state going to SMU. Then you have Maddox Cobb, who's going to Houston. You have Hamp Fay, who's going to Michigan State. You have Daniel Greek, who's going to Mississippi State. You have River Rodriguez going to. He's a junior, so he can go a lot of other places. You have 5 quarterbacks that honestly could go anywhere they want. Like big, that's SEC. That's like big time colleges everywhere else, and you just don't. You take off Daniel Greek from All State, which I mean I get it because their team didn't do high and he doesn't have the stats because he doesn't have the talent around him as much as these other teams do. So I get it, but it's shocking how good these quarterbacks are in Division One, and like some of those guys don't even get recognized because of how good they are. So I mean, Hamp Fay leading his team to that good of a ranking, and then I believe the passing like almost. What is that? 1,300 yards passing. I mean, that's a great season for Hamp Fay, and not even getting anything is kind of shocking, in my opinion. I mean, I think Maddox Cobb had a better season than him. I think that, of course, Preston Stone had a better season than him. I mean, I feel like he should have got recognized for how much he did for All Saints, especially in those last few games, beating those teams and keeping it close with Nolan in the semifinals. I just feel like he should have got more recognized than he did.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you there. I mean, but that's the thing is there's so much talent looking at Division One quarterbacks that it's honestly once you actually look into who he's going up against, it's almost hard to argue to take any of those guys out of the all district list. But Ryan, what do you have to add to this?
No, I totally agree. It's really hard to do that, especially when you're looking at everything. Especially when you want to, especially when you want to put all these guys up in the all state category too, right? You gotta you do this on the all district, and you're already having a hard time in the all district, and then you have to choose between like only you can only pick 3 guys for all state. So obviously Preston Stone deserved first team all state, and I 100% get that, but how hard you have to look at how hard was it to choose Maddox Cobb over over River Rodriguez? Like how hard was it to choose River Rodriguez over the next guy on the list, right? I think that's something that maybe politics goes into a little bit, or maybe it's just a hard decision to make, and you have to go at what you basically. If you give this guy first team all district, then you can't give the second team all district like that, right? So I think there's a lot of that goes into this, but there's just like y'all said, too many talented quarterbacks in the division this year. 100%.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you mentioned River Rodriguez, and someone else I wanted to mention that we haven't mentioned before on the podcast, or if we have, it's been very briefly, is his running mate in the backfield, Brad Evans, who's a class of 21 linebacker and running back. And I saw his name float around, and I decided to watch his film the other day because I hadn't looked a lot at it. And good Lord, how does he not have offers? You need to go watch his film yet again. This is Brad Evans from Midland Christian. His stats on the season, he had 157 rushes for 1,250 yards and 15 touchdowns. And a comment on Twitter described him to be tough as a Waffle House steak. And if you've ever eaten a Waffle House, you know that those things aren't soft. But I mean, he's tough as nails. He's a very, very hard and physical runner. And he's doing this against teams like Nolan Catholic and Parrish, teams that could give a lot of public schools in Texas a run for their money. But I'll turn to our recruiting expert first, Walker. I mean, how do you think he's flown under the radar of so many colleges? Because as of now, he only has offers from Balaparcio and Benedictine College.
I honestly cannot tell you. I think watching his film, you understand how talented this kid is. And it just shocks me. It really does. Like you said, he's not doing it against teams that are bad. Like, he's doing it against solid teams that went far in the playoffs. Like, he has 1,200 rushing yards this year, more than most, like, any other back in all of TAPS. And he plays that and linebacker. Like, that's shocking he didn't get recognized even more than he did. I mean, kid's a great player. I like putting him like he was the third back on first team All State. I think that's honestly a good number for him because Grant Robinson had a great season. And I mean, it is Mika Megwa, and he's one of the top backs, not just only in TAPS, but I mean in the state and then in the nation in this class. So I mean, I understand that. But I think a good ranking for him is, the third person in that first team All State. I think that's good for him. But the man should have so many more offers than he does. He's a great back. He's tough, like you said. He runs the ball well. I mean, that's a guy who's going to be very, very underrated in the state of Texas.
Yeah, I have to agree with him and River Rodriguez in that backfield for Midland. You can start to see why they've begun to be so successful, even as early on as they are in Division One. But Ryan, do you have anything to add to Brad Evans and how he's helped build this Midland team?
I 100% think that this Midland team was has shot up over the years. I mean, he's a senior this year, right? So he shot up over the years, and now as he is in his senior year, he definitely carried this team along the way. So I think that's something that you have to look at, especially as this Midland team has grown. And we've said that in the past podcasts how this Midland team has grown. And so I think you see that a lot. But I would like to say this, and this is going back to how we talked about North versus South earlier. And this is just to touch on this real quick. If you look at the Division One first team All State, those top three running backs that were the two running backs that were above Bradford Evans are still all three of them are on the first team all district for what's called Division One District One, which means that none of the District Two guys even got in that top three conversation for for those backs. And I don't want to say anything about the talent area versus the North versus the South, but when you see the top three running backs for all from the North, I think that's where you kind of have to look at something. Well, how does that stack up against each other? Also, saying that Bradford Evans really couldn't have gone any higher than he did. He was only competing with the guys that are in his same district, right? So,
right.
I think that's something you always have to look at, and especially with how good a guy does for a school.
Grant Robinson with the Furman, so that's a Division One running back, and Amika Mego is gonna go Power 5 as a running back, like the top teams in the nation type running back. So I mean, having him as number 3, and you can count Christian Benson, he first team athlete, but I mean he's a running back, he's a receiver, whatever you want him to be, but having him also up there with him, I mean, it's impressive. Yeah. I think that's like we've been saying, underrated guy in the state, not just in private school, but in the state of Texas.
Yeah, exactly. And again, we brought up a lot there, and it's a lot to digest. But actually, after that lengthy analysis, Division One, we're going to move into Division Two and look at and kind of pinpoint some things here. DC ran away with everything in District 2, and probably deservingly so. I mean, they just absolutely blitzed everyone in that division, and you can't really argue too much there. I want to say something first of all. In terms of District 2 linebackers, Smith Pruitt from Grace got the first spot on the second team, and I'm looking at the 5 people ranked ahead of him, and I'm not going to say names, but there are at least 3 of those that absolutely should not be ranked ahead of him. I watched Smith play in about 6 or 7 games this season, and he was, without a doubt, in my opinion, a first-team linebacker. However, I mean, it is what it is. There's a lot of politics involved, and only 2 of those are DC running backs. So there's some other kids that, I'm not going to go into detail, but definitely should not be there. Trevor Tazak from Regents, ranked 4th in the district at running back, is just absolutely absurd. I mean, I've watched that kid's film. If you're going to tell me there were 3 running backs better than him there, that is incredibly faulty. However, Walker, I'll hand it to you first. Is there anything that you want to hit on out of Division 2?
I don't think I was really surprised with anything. There's a lot of different, I think, like he said, DC ran away with a lot of them. I think the quarterback, TJ King, I think maybe he didn't he had a great season. I think maybe Drew Dickey's a better quarterback, and Carson Cross was a better quarterback than him. But I mean, he led his team to the state championship. He had a great year. I mean, I think he finally found a matchup in a defense that could match his talent, and regions in the state championship. So that's what happened when he didn't play as great. But I mean, Carson Cross, honorable mention. I mean, I get it, but I feel like he should have been higher for how good of a season he had. But you can't really rank him over those two guys. So it just shows the talent in this thing. I was surprised, in the all-state list, Alex Welch from Southwest Christian didn't make it, but I also understand that. But I honestly really, I don't think it was too terrible about. I think the Division II list is actually not terrible. I was really I like most of the positions. Yeah, I think Mark Saunders is the number one back. I think that's a great choice. Having him, then Sean Coleman. You could argue that Sean should have got the number one spot just for how good his team did. But Mark Saunders, almost a 2,000-yard rusher every single season he's played. So, I mean, got to give it to him. I'm happy Corey Harris made it the third. Eli Smith is a great back from Houston St. Baptist. He deserved it. I think that Trevor Tezak at least should have made second team. I think he should have made it at least into that. Yeah, I think they kind of messed him up in this all-state list. But I mean, I'm happy that for at least my guys, Tyson Flowers got first team first team DB, and then Mark Simmons got first team linebacker. I'm very happy with that. But yeah, overall, I'm very happy with the list. I mean, there's a lot of you can hear or there type of things, but I think they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, exactly. And something I want to hit on is TJ King. I don't know how he wasn't listed as an athlete in these lists. I mean, I think people blatantly know he's not a true quarterback. He played running back for 2 or 3 years at DC, and his primary game is with his legs. In terms of all-state quarterbacks, Drew Dickey and Carson Cross are better true quarterbacks than him. And I think he's getting a lot of this voting based on DC's success, although Drew Dickey won state with Regents, so I don't really know where that comes in. However, it's not taking anything away from TJ King. I think he should be first team all-state, however, as an athlete, not as a quarterback. But, it's just like you said, it's little here or there things. There's not a lot you can nitpick. And if these are the things we're nitpicking, then honestly, Taps and the Taps coaches did a good job. However, Ryan, I see your boy Trey Purdue got got second team All-State running back. Is there anything else you want to hit on?
So if I was gonna say something about Trey, I think Trey's a really I've seen him play over the years. I played basketball with him back in the day. I played football. I've seen him play football over the years. He literally could have been designated as an athlete himself. He is such a great player. But if I'm being completely honest, I think looking at Eli Smith's stats, he's a really great player too. The thing is, Trey was so versatile over the year that when he played on the defensive side and the offensive side, he really showed out as the best player on that Lacey team. So it was kind of hard. If you had him go on the defensive side, making him do all that work on the offensive side too was kind of hard to do all that. But enough about that. I think Trey could have gone either way with Eli Smith. Eli is a junior. So, maybe there's something in that standard that you could have given it to Trey, but either way, I think Trey deserved where he was. He's got a great honor. But I was going to say this, a couple things. First off, I love how, Andrew Dickey, his spot, I think he could have been first team. I think we all can agree on that. Depending on how you rank TJ King and what position you put him at. But the thing I want to mention, and I've been up on him the past 3 weeks and what we've been talking, but Jacob Trimble was the number one wide receiver in all state as a sophomore. That should just tell you to think about how good he's going to be the next 2 years. Not only is he better than his entire district as a wide receiver, he's better than the entire Division II as a wide receiver as a sophomore. So I think that's a name you need to look out for. I think that's a name colleges need to look out for. Jacob Trimble is going to be a stud by his senior year, and I think that's something we all need to look out for, especially as we see Drew Dickey and how he's going to be. He's only a junior, so I think we can already basically say if he has the same year that he does this year, next year, he'll probably be first-team All-State quarterback as well. So just looking at those younger guys.
Oh yeah, for sure. I just did a quick scan. Jacob Trimble is the only sophomore on this all-state list in terms of receivers. So he's kind of in a class by himself, and it'll be interesting to see if he can widen his level of dominance over the rest of the TAPS Division II receivers his next 2 years in high school. However, we'll have to wait for the upcoming seasons to see if that plays out. We now move on into the Division III analysis, and this is kind of where everything hit the fan, so to say. Apparently, there's a lot of drama. There are people voting in the wrong districts. Apparently, certain presidents controlling everything. And apparently, Covenant really got the short end of the stick because they had to quarantine for a couple weeks, and that hurt kids' stats. However, it's stuff like you see Lake Country Christian got 12 first team spots, while where the state champs Covenant only got 6. And just a bunch of other stuff.
I think looking at it, I think Jordan Battles deserves the first team All State for a quarterback. I agree. He's the greatest athlete. You could put him more as an athlete, honestly, but I think as a quarterback, I think he deserved the first team spot. I don't care what anybody says. Alex Lack should have been honorable mention or second team All State. He had a great season and one of the top players in Division III. But the fact that Austin Sheets was not on the honorable mention or second team or first team offense for All-State is ridiculous. And the same thing for district. I mean, Alex Lack deserved, probably doing first team quarterback. But Austin Sheets as second team, I mean, that is difficult to say. A guy who led his team to the state championship does not get anywhere in Division III as an honorable mention quarterback. I think that's ridiculous. He put up stats because the thing about it is, yeah, you can say for all state should talk about more as a playoffs and then instead of all district. All district, if you don't want to make him high, that's fine, but you cannot put the man because he played the whole playoffs and won all those games for that team and not put him at least as honorable mention is ridiculous. And there's a lot of Covenant dudes that I think that got left off. I mean, the fact that nowhere, I believe, I'm going to look through this just to make sure. Yeah, nowhere on this honorable mention defense, first team, second team, or honorable mention, is Ian Aletta, the man who led all of TAPS in sacks. That's ridiculous. And I don't care if he only played 4 games in season in district. The fact that he did that in 4 games in district should put him there anyways. Because if not, he would have beat the sack record probably for all of TAPS. I mean, it's insane. Guys like that, it's ridiculous how they're not in there. I think that's something you need to look into because if you're not going to put him in all district because he didn't play the whole season, that's fine. But if you have to put him in all state because he led his team all the way up there, and he's only a sophomore doing this. I think that's insane. You have to put him up there.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I mentioned, Division III is kind of where you saw the wheels start to fall off the wagon in terms of integrity and, smart voting in terms of the TAPS coaches. However, Ryan, I'll turn to you now. What do you want to hit on from Division III?
I think it's funny to see how we were just talking about Austin Sheets. Austin Sheets is such a great quarterback. He is such a great quarterback. And I know we've already talked about enough of Austin Sheets on this podcast. I'm very high of him. I think very high. And as you can see from our interview with him, he's a good guy too. He's a really good guy. He has a lot to talk about and how good of a man he is. I think that's really hard to look at with his stats and with how he played and how he led this team. You still put him below some of these guys. But I want to say this when we're talking about Covenant players getting snubbed. Okay, if we're gonna say because he's a sophomore, he's a receiver, he doesn't deserve to be higher than second team all state. But at the same time, Jacob Trimble is first team all state. Not saying that Jacob Trimble's insane. I just told you that. But Christian Wells is literally at the bottom of second team receivers. In reality, I think him and Austin Sheets combined probably led that team to the state championship. So it's kind of hard to look at a wide receiver that was a part of that team that was insanely good and then put him below all of these other receivers just because what? Just because he is of a lower grade level or a lower class because he's a sophomore. I think that's really hard to say, especially when you're putting some of these guys. And yes, I don't know some of these guys super well that are on the receiver list above him, but in all reality, I think that it's really hard to go against a guy that went to state and a wide receiver that almost was on this like state path just because some guys are older than him in what's it called in like grade wise. So I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. And honestly, with situations like this in TAPS, it's best not to think about it too much because the more you think about it, the more confusing and convoluted it gets. And it just really will put your brain in a freaking pretzel. However, one thing I want to mention, because it's closer to my home in East Texas, is Dozie Ifedi being ranked the third best receiver in his district, who, I mean, far and away is the best receiver, at least, I mean, from a college talent aspect in that district. Just committed to Lamar University in Beaumont, and he got absolutely nothing All-State, which, granted, Gorman has been in kind of a tough spot for the past couple years, and I think that's probably what these coaches were factoring into it because they've been in a rebuilding stage. They're going through a program and regime change. It's a little hard for them right now, but the fact that he got nothing All-State is absolutely ridiculous to me. He's a tremendous talent. He's a very good kid, and that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. However, I hope he gets the opportunity to take that out on his opponents at Lamar. However, that is all of the analysis we have for Division III. And now we'll move into another question asked by Caleb Corum, actually. He wants us to analyze the top programs on the rise. And this was actually a fun project for us to look into because – there are several teams we've mentioned throughout us recording that, a couple years ago were really in a down spot and you couldn't see much potential for them going forward. And then bam, out of nowhere, they rise and they're competing for the state championships. So the first team regarding that I'll mention is the most obvious pick and the one that we have talked about the most before this, and that's Cypress Christian. Even though they moved from Division II to Division III, which means there's a drop in talent, they went from getting blown out every single game to playing for a state championship within a year. I think a lot of that is accredited to Chris Hogan and the coaching he has brought to Cypress. I've been really high on them all year. However, Walker, I'll turn it to you first. I mean, how do you think they turned it around this quickly?
I mean, I think there was always talent there, and I think one guy we didn't really talk about in the all-district list a second ago was their quarterback, Maxwell Loundrum. That kid is a stud, and I think I talked about on last podcast about that kid is only a sophomore and has a bright future ahead of him. Having him at the helm for 2 more seasons at quarterback, I think he got very lucky going down there and having a guy like that to be there. But I mean, they have talent. They've always had guys, but having now a coach that they can really rally around and coach him hard and coach him in a good way. I think that's why you see that team be so dominant. And also besides, like, there's not many. Like, the talent in DFW in Division III especially is much more talented, I guess, than the South. So, it was easier for Houston to make that jump. But I think they still had to get together and be coached by a good coach to get up there. So, but shout out to them. I think they're going to be there for a while.
Yeah, without a doubt. We've talked about them a lot so far in the previous episodes. Ryan, what do you have to add regarding Cypress?
I think so. I think what I've said all along with Chris Hogan. I think Chris Hogan is an amazing coach, and I think he did a great thing. I think switching from Grapevine Faith after his son left is something that he probably thought about for a while. But bringing all of the talent not talent, but all the coaching staff that he brought over there, as well as the fact that he was, like we said, he got super lucky with a quarterback like that, and you have to say, in the next couple of years that he's like, you can't knock on the fact that he's not going to be good when he has a quarterback for the next couple of years to go along with him. He's got his right-hand man with him that he's going to, got to be able to coach for the next couple of years. And hopefully if they do well, like they did this year, it'll be like an outside, advertisement to other guys to come to that school and maybe, have the same path. Right. So I think that's something you got to look at for the Cypress team.
Yeah, for sure. Walker, I hand it off to you for this one. Southwest Christian is another team that we've talked about, and a team that seems like it's trending upwards. And obviously that you have more knowledge regarding them than either of us do. So I'll let you lead off with them.
I mean, you have to, let's look it back. All right, my senior year, we were 3-7, I believe, and didn't make playoffs. The year after I left, and some of my friends' senior year, They were first round against Cedar Hill Trinity Christian, and it is what it is. And then the year after that, now they're in the semifinals, facing Dallas Christian. From there to there to there, the jump that they have made is amazing. The coaching staff has changed here and there over the couple of years since I've been there, but they finally have a good coaching staff that rallies around Coach Flowers. They have the school is like supporting them. They're ready to go, and they have good guys, young guys that are going to make that jump again for next year. I mean, I say it again, and I'll say it I've said it before. I'll say it again. Having Tyson Flowers at the helm, and then on offense and defense, and then Mark Simons on offense and defense, those two guys can get you far. And they have a lot of other young guys that are behind them on the lines, on the linebacking core, running backs. I think every one of those guys are going to be, they're hungry. Like they're already telling me that, like, we're going to be there next year. Don't trip. Like it's going to be like that. So I'm happy for the dudes. Those guys they're working now. They're getting ready to go. They're excited for next year for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt. Ryan, you have anything to add regarding Southwest?
I think obviously the man you're gonna want to talk to is Walker about Southwest Christian, but like I've talked about this, like I've talked about every single time he said Southwest Christian has been on the rise ever since I left high school, and I think they're gonna be good in the next couple of years. So
yeah, exactly. Another team that has definitely trended up is Waco Riker. They went from going 4-7 last year and getting bounced the first round of the playoff at the hands of Bay Area Christian to, although I think they only went 6-5 this season, and that was due to a bad start in non-district. They ended up making the state championship game, although getting beat by Shiner St. Paul. But that quick turnaround from getting bounced first round to making the state championship game is very impressive. And Walker, I'll start with you. I mean, how do you think they turned it around this quickly?
I mean, Jake Boozer was a big part of that. He was the quarterback over there, and he's been there for a while. He really helped that team win and overcome that like the adversity that is there. And of course, having a transfer in of Eli Cummings his senior year really does help. I mean, having a Division I kid in Division IV any team would love to have that type of dude. He's a great player. And that's a kid they're lucky they brought in, and for not only for offense playing running back where he'll go play in college, but he also really was a dominant player on defense for them too. So really like that's someone that they're gonna lose big time next year, and I think Jake Boozer's also a senior as well. So we're gonna see how they can overcome those two guys leaving. But that's a team for sure on the rise.
Yeah, without a doubt. Ryan, you want to say anything regarding Riker's success?
I thought Riker was really good this past year. Obviously, we saw them with make a run in the playoffs and stuff like that. So I think obviously Riker is a team they can play the same way they did this year, and how they will proceed to do. I think they're going to be a good team.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And the last team that we have to talk about regarding programs on the rise is Midland Christian, and it's not necessarily because of how they've done. Because they were bad like a couple years ago, because they've been solid for the past couple years, but it's because that they dropped or they moved up a division because they just completely dominated Division II forever. And they just made the jump to Division I, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And they've held their own very well since they've been in there. They just this past season, a couple weeks ago, made it to the semifinals of Division I, where they got beat by Parrish, which is not something to frown upon at all. But Ryan, I'll hand it to you first. How do you think Midland has been able to keep this level of success even when the talent around them that they're playing has grown?
I think they're reloading, and part of that is because they are in Midland, and that's one of kind of the only private schools out there and all that. So when you look at it, a lot of those guys that don't succeed in those want to go play on a different level and in the public school area, they want to go to private school. Midland's kind of one of the only answers, and so but there's a lot of talent over there, right? And so there's guys like you see. I'm gonna talk about this right now for the future success for this team. You got like we had a conversation earlier. We didn't really know how good Joshua Cobb is, but saying that Joshua Cobb's above Austin UK, he must be good, right? He must be a good lineman. And so having him for the next 2 years is going to be great. Obviously, you got River Rodriguez for a whole nother year, which is just another guy in his senior year that's going to bring on an absolute load for this team. I mean, you're talking about the quarterback of this team that's going to, be successful. You got his, right-hand man, Chandler Caraway, who's going to be his wide receiver that he's going to look out to this entire year. I think it's guys like that and a team like this, is just they've gotten so much threat on the offensive side that I think they're going to be successful this next year, especially that that Caraway or Rodriguez duo right there. So obviously Midland is grown over the years, and I don't think there's I think this next year is a great chance for them to prove that they are a top dog. So.
Yeah, exactly. I like how you mentioned that. Midland is historically, a tremendous area for football. It's out in West Texas, and there's not a lot to do out there except go out and hit each other running full speed. So that might be why they're so good. And like I mentioned, that duo this year of Rodriguez and Brad Evans, really, really took them into another gear. However, Walker, I'll hand it off to you here. What do you have to say regarding Midland Christian and their sustained success?
I think you really talk about Midland's always been historic. They have Friday Night Lights of Odessa Permian always out there, and they've had great programs as Midland High and then Midland Lee. Those public schools have always been dominant in that area. But Midland Christian, even when they were in Division II, when they played all of us, they were dominant then. They were dominant now. They've always had guys, and they always will have guys. It's how if they can get enough guys to really overcome these teams in DFW. In the past couple of years, they've been close. I think with River Rodriguez at the helm for at least one more year, I think he's going to make every push he can to overcome that hill. And even I know we talked about how Joshua Cobb should have made the all-state list, but having a guy like him as a sophomore, and he's only going to get better, and you really find your groove your junior and senior years. I think that's going to be a guy on the offensive line who's going to be dominant for them. Just like a lot of other guys that are young, they have some dudes that are going to be there for sure. And I think just on the rise, that program is definitely on the rise in private school football.
Yeah, I completely agree. It'll be interesting to see how Midland and the other three teams that we named will continue to carry forward, as they've all appeared to establish very solid cultures at their respective schools. And we'll see if those cultures hold as players flow in and out of the programs. And now we're actually going to move into our final segment, which is the class of 22 linebacker rankings. So kids are going to be seniors in high school this next coming year. And this is actually a very talented linebacker class, in my opinion. And at number one, we see Vincent Page from Nolan Catholic, who seems to be the clear favorite for number one in this linebacker class. He can line up a defensive end as well. You saw him do that a lot this season. He's very rangy and fast. He can cover both ends of the field very easily. Good luck scrambling on him. He even has a kick return touchdown if you want to see his athleticism. He has offers currently from Baylor, Kansas, Syracuse, UConn, and Houston. And look for him to pick up some more as the season goes on. At number two, you see Jackson Berry from Plano John Paul II. He's very physical. I think he's the most physical linebacker in this class. He's a very hard hitter. He's very talkative as well. He appears to be the emotional leader of the team and kind of especially the captain of that defense. You can tell who the top dog is there. At number three, we see Matt Freeman from Trinity Christian Cedar Hill, and he's very explosive in his own right. He has a quick first step. He can also line up at defensive tackle or edge rusher like Vincent Page does. He's very good at forcing fumbles. His technique is very good, and he knows how to punch the ball out. So it appears he specializes there. Number four, we see Keegan Addison from Parish Episcopal. I actually got the chance to watch him play in the championship game against Nolan Catholic, and both Walker and I can agree. I think that he is very good in his own right. He's a smart linebacker. He's incredibly patient. I think he's the most disciplined in his reads out of this entire group. He's very, very good at filling the hole and a terrific form tackler. So this is your guy that's incredibly, incredibly smart and plays great technique out of this class. And rounding out the top five, and what I'll discuss on, is Sean Kane from the Woodlands Christian Academy. He's very, very physical, like other guys I've mentioned so far. He's a headhunter. Like Vincent Page, but even more so in his own right, he can stretch the entire field in order to make plays. So out of those top five guys I mentioned, You see a lot of diversity. You see headhunters, you see rangy guys, you see guys that are incredibly smart and make great reads. So, I mean, just talking about those top five, that kind of makes me excited to see the rest of the class. And I'll hand it to you, Walker, first. Out of the top five guys I mentioned, is there anyone you want to comment on more?
I mean, watching film, I was very, very impressed with Jackson Barrett. I've already talked a lot about Vincent Page, so I'm not going to really mention him a lot here. But Jackson Barrett is a dog. He moves left to right well. His lateral movement is extremely good, and when he finds a hole, he hits it strong. And that's what I think that's something you need for a linebacker. Like he makes good reads. His IQ is really well. He's really good. I was very impressed with him. I really like Sean Kane too. Sean Kane is a very big time dude. I mean, at the school he really plays at, he's probably not going to get as much recognition as a lot of these other guys. But I mean, I think he's very talented. 6'1", 215, great player. He's going to be one of the kids like in the South that's going to be very, very high.
I agree. Ryan, is there anyone in the top five that you want to comment on?
Well, I was just gonna say, when you got three guys all in Division One, you start to see how this factor is going to be a very linebacker heavy Division One next year with the talent that there is, especially when these teams go up against each other. Is going to be fun to go watch them play because they're going to have so much talent on both sides of the ball when you're sitting there. But I was going to say something about the Woodlands. Sean Kane. When you are able to make the top five as a linebacker and you're in Division III, that should show something. And I think, like you said, Walker, not a lot of these schools may be looking too far in depth into like a Division III standard, but when you got a guy like Sean Kane who's got the body for it, I think there's something that you should stay when you're looking for a linebacker. I think we will start to see him on the rise this year in Division III. Hopefully, he basically just is a stud out in Division III. Hopefully he just leads that entire division. But definitely to look out for. Obviously, Vincent Page is in a class of his own, in my opinion. I think Vincent Page is going to be one of the stars to come out of TAPS, and you'll definitely hear his name in the future. 100% you will. But yeah, no, definitely a lot of talent. Definitely a lot of talent in Division One, and then obviously Matt Freeman. Don't know enough on him to comment, but Trinity Cedar Hill obviously is always loaded with good guys. So I expect him to be just as good as the rest of those guys that come out of that school.
I think like knowing just recruiting more, I think in the past couple years, linebacker in the state of Texas, just private and public, have not been elite. I mean, they really haven't been the tip top as other states have, and that's why you see a lot of this big time colleges kind of go out of state. But the class of 22, private and public, is very good, and I think it's probably the best it's been in the past 5-6 years. And I think a lot of schools in state are going to be looking for guys and linebackers inside of the state of Texas, and guys like Vincent Page, Jackson Berry, Matt Freeman are going to be a part of those dudes that are going to be at the top of those lists. It's one guy that is not talked about a lot because he transferred from Bishop Dunn to Duncanville this year was Jordan Crook. He's probably one of the top 5-10 linebackers in the state, and he was going to be a stud at Bishop Dunn this year, but decided to move out and go to Duncanville. And that's just another guy that out of out of Bishop Dunn that left, then went to other places. There's a lot of other guys that I can mention, but that he's one of those top tier linebackers that he probably would have been number one, but he left. So it shows that sometimes like the transfer portal of TAPS and everything about it, like you have guys leave and you have guys come in, and he was one of those guys that left this year.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sorry. Go on, Ryan.
I was gonna say, when Duncanville's taking your players, they must be good, right? Like when Duncanville won some of your guys.
Yeah,
I think obviously that's fun to see this year. Like you said, the linebackers are gonna be so much better. But what were you gonna say?
I think one of the biggest things the quarterback for Duncanville is Grayson James. So he was the guy who brought John Paul II a couple years ago to the state championship and lost to Parrish, sadly. But that's not the point. The point is that for his senior year, because their quarterback, Chris Parson, left and went to Red Oak, he transferred to Duncanville. And he is now going to probably lead them to a state championship over there. They're playing DeSoto. And I don't care if you like public school, private school or not. Someone go watch that DeSoto Duncanville game. I'm going to have a great time. It's going to be a great time matchup. And go watch. And the biggest time was Grayson James tweeted out when he beat, I forgot exactly who, one week this year. I think he was beating Cedar Hill, and he said, "Oh yeah, I can do more than just taps." Like that's something that like everyone kind of says, "Oh yeah, I'm just a taps private school kid. That's why I'm that good." And he tweeted out saying, "Oh yeah, I'm that good of a player. Like I don't. It's not private school ball. It's also public school ball. I can do that." And I think that shows the talent that is in taps. That those guys can go dominate private school and then go and dominate public school as well. And that's why you kind of have to remember, oh yeah, these kids are just as good in private school. So I think that's a big time thing. I one of those future down the episode, I'll talk about the transfer portal because there's a lot of guys that leave and go. But I think just mentioning a linebacker like Jordan Crook, I think that's someone you have to remember.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really liked how you brought up the transfer portal of taps, and that's something that we can definitely touch on down the road. However, just for the sake of time, we can't do it right now because we could literally spend an entire episode doing that. However, I will name the rest of the top 10 linebackers, starting with number 6, Carson Hentz from Houston St. Pius. At number 7, you have Weston Benson from Austin Regents. At number 8, you have Mark Simmons, Walker's boy from Southwest Christian. At number 9, we see Felipe Tristan from Bullard Brook Hill. And at number 10, we see Aiden Carpenter from Argyle Liberty. So, guys, I just mentioned the rest of the top 10 linebackers in the class. Is there anyone that I just mentioned or anyone that I didn't that you want to touch on before we move on?
For me, okay, so Weston Benson and Mark Simmons, if you go to the All-State this year, and, this is seniors and sophomores and juniors, Mark Simmons was number 1 rated linebacker in Division II, and Weston Benson was ranked number 4. And also Graybill Grubbs was number 2. Those are all 3 juniors, guys who were the first team All-State for linebacker. So that's a big-time depth in Division II in the junior class. It's going to come up and be dogs their senior year. I think all those kids are going to be great time players. Gonna be guys that are gonna go play college ball, absolutely. And they have the size, they have the build, they have the speed, they have the IQ. Those guys, I think a lot of these guys in the top 10 are gonna be big time dudes. They're gonna go play college ball for sure. Other guys, I think the Grant Harlson for Fort Bend Christian, guys, I remember watching him play. He was a good player. Jonte Wise, backing up Eric Franco, the stud linebacker at Nolan, that's a guy that you have to look out for. I think TJ Lucas, the Dallas Christian boy, he's going to be another big one too. There's a lot of them. It's a very deep class, I think, and it's going to be exciting to see how good they are this year.
Yeah, no, I definitely have to agree there. That's all we actually have regarding the 22 linebackers, and that'll wrap up the rest of the segments we're trying to cover today. We actually have some really big ideas moving forward, and I'll hand it off to Walker, who's been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to at least preview that.
So we have this idea, and with awards, award the season coming up, what we want to do is kind of do like this award show, and it's an idea that I think it's gonna take a lot of production. It's gonna take a lot of work, and we want to do it right for these dudes. And Texas private school guy tweeted out the other day their player of the year, small and large. But I was like, let's take this a step further, and we want to do all divisions. We want to do division 1, 2, 3, and 4 in taps, and SPC as a whole, of guys that are going to be MVP, coach of the year, newcomer of the year, offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, etc. And there's a lot more, and we want to do like kind of all Americans for private school, of first team all private school, second team all private school, honorable mention private school. And we're looking into that right now, doing the things, and hopefully the thing about it is we want to get these guys something to honor them, and we're looking into like trophies. But right now, of course, because we're up and coming, we don't really have a lot of we're not making revenue from this. It's more just to shout out these guys. So one of the things we're looking into is sponsors. And if any of y'all, if there's dads watching this for companies, if there's coaches watching this, if there's trainers watching this, anything, if y'all are very interested in wanting to sponsor this event, please reach out to me. My DMs are going to be on the screen. That you can go contact the private school Instagram, Twitter, all that. Because I think it's something we need to do, but we need kind of funding for these trophies, because I want to give something for these kids to actually be recognized. You're going to have the big time guys get honored anywhere. But there's a lot of these kids that, they'll have their all district selections, but that's really it. And I want a lot of these good kids to be recognized more. But if I want to make it better, we do need, I hate asking for money, but we do need some form of like something to fund this show. And please reach out to me if you want to support it. And then also, we've thought about doing a Patreon. That is something we're in the works. So if y'all want to donate there, it's going to be down below. Hopefully, if we can get enough funding and it actually goes into something, hopefully next week I can release the nominees and we'll do this really cool thing and we'll have an award show. It'll be legendary. We're going to dress up. It's going to look awesome. It's going to be a really cool thing. And I think it's going to be something really special. I want it to be something these guys really are fond of and can like be proud of. So that's really it. Please, yes, if you want to sponsor, please reach out and let us know if you want to do anything. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. No, we've been watching this process fold out as Walker's showing us some of the stuff and the ideas that he's had. And both Ryan and I can attest, this is something that we want to do that, if done correctly, will look incredibly, incredibly good. However, like most startup businesses, we're not limited by creativity. We're limited by capital. And we don't, like Walker was saying, for these ideas to get off the ground, we need a little bit of funding to make that happen. But I guarantee you, if we get that and if we have adequate funding to make these ideas happen, it will be done incredibly well. And you will not be at all disappointed by the job that is done. Yeah. So please, if you are interested in sponsoring the show, please contact Walker, contact any of us, and just get in contact with us, and we'll move forward and see how that works out. However, if that is actually all the material that we want to cover, I've been 1/3 of your hosting crew, Wes Tolleson. Walker, Lott, and Ryan Schroeder have been themselves. Guys, thank you yet again. We will see you in the next episode. Peace.